I thought today I would show the disclaimer and get that out of the way first. Mission accomplished. There it is, fully disclaimed. And then maybe look, here's some of the pictures. We kind of make sure we're sharing there. It looks like it. Back to that screen. So we left off that the last summer that Chinese spy balloon was American, and UK's geoengineering program had to have a title. So they played with it, and it came out to Satan, packed with American tech, with leaders in jail, posse comitatus, fate uncertain. We tried to do what we thought was a job to alert the people. Americans are blind and deaf. Delbert Larson scanned the empty woods where the posse comitatus once envisioned a paramilitary settlement for white supremacists, a haven from government regulation and taxes. I don't think they would have considered themselves first white supremacists. They were Bible believers. He now lives alone in a makeshift home along the rolling countryside east of Tigerton. White-haired man with steely blue eyes who cuts wood for heat and reads the Bible for spiritual comfort. He was a big deal. Sitting in prison after a government crackdown in the mid-'80s, 85. This is all going back to where homeschooling, Christian liberty. These guys, that's where the posse epitomized such groups with its loathing of Jews, blacks, taxes, and government. Most of them really just hated the taxes and the government, and they were convinced by other means that they were superior because of the bell curve. That's what they thought. I was brushing up on these things. Hate mongers, lawbreakers, at least 6 posse members have been convicted of crimes. Well, there weren't ever that many. And this was in Wisconsin because, well, it's just so wooded and secluded. They wrote songs about Gordon Call, tax protesters back in the 80s. How long have you been a part of this? Not as long as me, not as deep as me, not with these guys. And it was, the mailbox level labeled Life Science Church Christian Liberty Academy because it was they were a part of the homeschool movement, and they were one of the first ones that the Jesuits, the John Birchers, and they recommended them to us. Hey, take care, fix these guys up. They're gonna. And a lot of people from Christian Liberty still own property in Wisconsin, and who blames them? Not do re mi. More like Ruby Ridge. These guys used to line up in camouflage, shoot their guns in the river. They didn't really scare us. All of them were pretty nice. Everybody just liked to have fun. So that's a fox, and a chicken is eating the fox. And the chicken is supposed to be gold. I don't know where I got this, but this is from back in the day. They used to send messages, I guess, with the pictures. Anyway, there's an eyeball. Look at all the muscles and stuff. Flat Earth Nation. Golden Age past. What have you been studying? This is what I've been looking at. The eye has the fastest muscles in the body. Way to go, eyeball. The heart and the eye. Conversely, other research found that cerebrum can support microbial growth, and some cerebrum samples were found to have bacterial counts as high as, well, that's a lot. 10 to the third power is 1,000. You have to keep going up from there. Per gram or grain, I don't know. The bacteria were predominantly commensal. We're going to get into what is commensal as they continue to hide what's in our body. What is in our body? One good example is nitrification, the oxidation of ammonium ion to nitrate. Now, I want us to start looking at it. If it can happen in the body, it happens with the elements on Earth because we're made of the dust of these rocks, and the rocks could cry out. You've heard it all before. Henry Ford. Maybe he was millstone and became a millstoner because everything worked out for him. I just found out that he was sued for trying to help his employees. By 1914, he was offering $5 daily wage for qualified workers. That's $157 a day in 2014. I mean, that's better than a lot of people make, but that's not going to buy you a house in the suburbs, $157 a day, plus, take away the taxes. I don't think that. So I got that. Welfare capitalism. Ford was a pioneer for welfare capitalism. Did you see the thumbnail? It has the Dodge Brothers logos. It seems like the Rockefellers didn't like Ford, so they gave them money to start their own car company. And this is the logo they picked, They picked they kept the swastika for a long time. And they've kept it weird for a long time. Let's see. Within the triangle is drawn the symbol for the exalted Mercury, the monad, or one thing perfected. That's what the Theosophists, that's what the Renaissance, the people who don't want to believe in God of the Bible, they choose these things, the emerald tablets, the alchemy, the theosophy, the 7 steps of transformation, anything but the Bible. And it all comes down to that triangle is drawn, the symbol for exalted Mercury, the monad, or the one thing. It's their Satan. Vitale asserted that the safest plan to prevent evil where that is possible. A nation has the right to resist the injury another seeks to inflict upon it and to use force against the direct aggressors. This is from the India Quarterly. From the operational level of the war, it was a military concept, whereas preventative war was a political one. Preemption and prevention was not necessarily linked to war causation, but was a part and parcel of war conduct. Beyond the definitions and theories of preemption and prevention, well, that's what they're doing in what they call Israel today. Well, this was from the India Quarterly. Bush did this, I guess. They made this plan. February 8th, 2004, in an interview with Meet the Press, George Bush openly overruled the imminence requirement for use of force preemptively. He said that, I believe it is essential that when we see a threat, we deal with those threats before they become imminent. It's too late if they become imminent. Well, there's always steps up to imminency, and you could be wrong. Have you ever considered that the United States could have been wrong about some of those things? Let's hope I was sharing the screen. I was doing a new thing of going through the pictures first, showing the disclaimer, because I wrote a little haiku here I'll start off with. Warlords, not nations, each demand explanation, syndicate violence. My goal is not to merge with them or their planned future. I have warned you of a mafia so powerful it could hide flat earth, support abortion, even partial birth, mafia, Satanist, theosophist, spiritualist, hysterical behavior, hiding the fact that God is not dead. Modern mob made my mommy go make more money. I had to add a sentence to close that page. Based on my past, people are surprised I want to run away. Running away is not surrendering. Once I've surrendered to Christ, I'm done surrendering. And knowing those that have not had their eyes open fail to see or hear for a reason. Some are only open for a season, running away from the fire, attacked for reason of preventative self-defense. That's what they're doing today in so-called Israel. It is something used by people in power to stay that way today, every day. And this is why they hid flat earth, made abortion legal, and all of the other shenanigans that they're doing right now. Pizzagate much. They made abortion legal and turned us into Teletubbies. You better be ready to run from Satan. Has a plan for their cities. They know, you know, they know, you know, the guy. You may have heard me say something that proves me Paco once more. They know how to even the score. And what I mean by that passage is they know what you know. They watch what you learn, and they're not going to take any chances. If you are a survivor, they look you up. If you're not running for the hills, just being away from them, you think they're going to go, yeah, this is one of those flat earth guys, or this is one of those guys that listen to him. Just get rid of him. Oh, no, you're going to be immune. You're going to be like that guy on the flight seat A111, was it, or A11? I have seen a half moon at high noon. The moon is always out during the day. And most of the time, it's not like a flashlight shining on a tennis ball. Now, they use fake math to make fake atomic bombs to keep us all in fear. You know it. They know you know it. It's time to wake up, and you think they're not going to do something about it. I'm pretty good in the mountains. That's where I'll be headed. With God's help, we'll see what happens. Because when, not if, they declare martial law, and it's defined, I will not be complying. I've already told people that. They know, you know, and the American people know. When they declare martial law, I'm saying, well, it's back to wait for China, whoever's going to come get us. We owe our soul to their company store. It's mafias. We've been set up. We're that guy they set up. I am resting in the comfort that I have done and will continue this theologic work as I was encouraged by Abba Spirit himself. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Did you hear me drop in that part about they use fake math? The whole quantum physics thing, the atomic bomb, Stephen Hawking, is to make you think you're stupid. Well, I kind of get it, but I don't have time to study it. If you did, you'd find out it's all nonsense. Let's close these tabs out. Calx is a substance formed from an ore or mineral that has been heated. It is now understood to be an oxide, so they didn't know. Term also sometimes used in older texts on artist techniques to mean calcium oxide. We're just talking about calx. Once again, I have to remind myself, what am I even looking at? Philisticated substances. Now they believed this from right after the releasing of Satan, right up until the Renaissance. It's these guys. This was as much as what they would have us believe in germ theory. You know, they came up with this thing and go, oh, we were wrong about this. It's germ theory. But this at some, was like, it wasn't oxygen that made fire because this guy hadn't discovered it yet. So they had to have something that, why did it burn? It was because there was a lot of this in a dried out log. And so it burned it up. Oxygen theory took care of it. It did it, they got it all figured out. But before that, everything went back to the classical theory, but they thought they figured it out with, oh no, now we got calx and philostrum. Okay. So I enjoyed that. That looks stupid. And I thought, how dumb do they think we are? And then I realized, oh my gosh, they have contributed to making people dumber and dumber all the time. If I hadn't had my earthly father, say, enough of this, and in fifth grade, move me to the country, buy me a set of encyclopedias, and basically, keep me away from the world as much as he could. Didn't last long, but he tried. What's this? Valiant iron. I saved this. I must have saved it to read it later. Simplest are mixed metal oxides. That's probably because I'm wondering how come, we're made of the dust and I can track the heart's eyes and stuff, but it's always well, how do those, the gold and silver and gemstones that we build up by serving God, how does that affect the other living things in our body? Are there living things in our body? Is there really that whole world that they say is in there?
Or denied any of these theories, choosing to leave his years-long art project open for interpretation instead.
Huh?
This House Has People in It. This House Has People in It is an analog horror short film that was aired on Adult Swim back in March 2016. The short is often known for just how weird and disturbing its concept is. It was directed by Alan Resnick, the creator and actor of the Alan Tutorial channel we just discussed. Though, unlike Alan Tutorial, which started off a bit lighthearted and slowly descended into absolute madness, This House Has People in It wastes no time pulling viewers into its surreal, unsettling world. It starts with the footage of someone logging into a computer and choosing a specific video to play. The footage then cuts to the CCTV feed from a house with 9 cameras, and then cuts again to the main couple.
What will people do to make money? I mean, some of the things it's and these are just known hoaxes, but it may be there are a lot fewer people than we really, have been led to believe, and their minds are just being fed garbage. These are all crap.
Look inside, he felt a faint breeze coming from the hole, suggesting there might be an
It turns out, people make things up just to be on YouTube. I'm glad I don't do that.
Supposedly lived inside anything that could burn. According to the theory, once something caught
This will explain that better, that philosophy.
fire, it wasn't reacting with air. It was releasing phlogiston into the atmosphere. And when the flame went out, that meant the object had no more phlogiston left to give. It sounds ridiculous now, but back then, it was considered cutting-edge science. The theory had its roots in trying to explain combustion, rust, and even respiration, all through a single idea. Burning wood, phlogiston escapes. Metal rusting, same thing. It's just a slow release. People even believed air could get saturated. No one really knows what it is, who made it, or why it was.
Who would go through just somebody saying, "Oh, I'm going to bury this," and then find it and get famous? Come on.
Buried there. The stone itself is about 4 inches long, made of a type of quartzite not native to the area. That's already weird, but what makes it really fascinating is what's carved into it. Symbols of arrows, a moon, a teepee, an ear of corn, and what some say looks like an ancient face. Some people claim it's Native American, others think it's Masonic.
We just look at a
Argue
couple
it's
of
not
these
from this
things.
scientific rabbit hole. Torsion fields come from an actual term in general relativity. In Einstein's theory, space can bend and stretch. That's what gravity is. But what if space could also?
So your torsion field, as much as you've ever heard your torsion wrench, that's all brand new. That's all brand new. It's all fake.
Torsion field theory. There's a theory on the fringes of physics, one that's been buried, dismissed, rebranded, and still somehow it keeps showing up, a whisper beneath the surface of modern science and conspiracy. It's called torsion field theory, and depending on who you ask, it's either a misunderstanding, a breakthrough, or a pseudoscientific rabbit hole. Torsion fields come from an actual term in general relativity. In Einstein's theory, space can bend and stretch. That's what gravity is. But what if space could also twist, literally rotate on a point? That twisting torsion was explored in the 1920s by mathematician Elie Cartan, who extended Einstein's equations to allow for
Look at that. It's basically, I don't know if it's the other worlds, but the world is catching up to all the weird things you've known about for years. You don't think they know that?
Described as a celestial battle. The reports came in with strange consistency, black spheres, rods, and crosses flying through the sky, seemingly engaging in some kind of aerial conflict. People watched in shock as these objects clashed, darted across the sky, and eventually fell to the ground in clouds of smoke. What makes the story even weirder, a broadsheet, the 16th century version of news article, was actually printed about it, complete with a woodcut illustration of the scene. Now, here's the thing. This isn't some forgotten legend passed down by word of mouth. The broadsheet was published by Hans Glaser, a respected printer at the time, and it wasn't framed like a fairy tale. It was presented as news.
Two more.
Language carved into wooden tablets. It's called Rango Rango, and to this day, no one has cracked it. What's weird is that there's no clear origin. The rest of Polynesia didn't have writing. So where did this come from? How did a tiny island in the middle of the Pacific, with limited resources and contact, develop something so complex, and why did it vanish without a trace? Rango Rango looks like something out of an alien language primer. The glyphs are arranged in a unique pattern called reverse booster conversation and more of a demo, a high production glimpse into how Meta wants to be seen by the creator world. You've got the most powerful man in social media, the biggest YouTuber on the planet, and two of the most brand safe creators ever, all in one room. That's not a casual sit down, that's a message. Here's the theory. This wasn't about fixing Facebook video. It was about legitimizing Meta and creator spaces. It still doesn't fully control. YouTube owns video, TikTok owns a short form culture, and Meta, well, it's been struggling.
So I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I'm just closing tabs today. Here's some more of that racist stuff back. We were studying it back in the day. I was never into this. I was warning people like, look, we don't want to get hooked up with these identity people. Come on, man. It was even back then they were coming in with that God's name is Yahuwah Hade, anti-government militia, late 70s, 80s. Well, of course. I know you don't believe it, but it happened and it was real. And we've been waiting on them to do martial law and the two-party system in Israel, what the two-state hope, it always is crushed. Well, they're doing something about it now, aren't they? But if you're believing the theology that has always been shoved down your throat and you go to the Bible, you're going to think it's imminent because they have plants, puppet masters running those, writing the books, the 700 Clubs, the Left Behind series, the Sony-inspired Christian rock movement where every new hit was by a sexier and sexier young girl, or the young boys that could rock and roll like the world. I was into it, man. Then I got married, raised a family, and realized, oh man, but it was always about, we're going to fight them. We're going to fight them. Well, no, we're not. That was always a wrong idea. It's what they plan people to do. They want you to go think you have a chance. Randy Weaver, we went over this the other day, didn't we? Or I'll just leave this up. This is how they set him up. Anyway, this is the proof that they set him up. It was entrapment. The sawed-off shotgun was an agent that asked him to do it, and they gave him the wrong court date. The court learned that the Weaver trial, which had been scheduled for February 19th, would have been changed to give participants sufficient travel time following a federal holiday on the preceding Monday. On February 5th, the court clerk sent a notice to the parties informing them that the trial was rescheduled for February 20th. Although this notice was not sent directly to Weaver, a copy was sent to and received by the people that later charged him with. That's how they came to his cabin to shoot his wife and stuff, was like, you missed a court date, buddy. They didn't tell him the date. But they didn't care. It just goes on to show that they didn't tell the grand jury that he didn't know the date. They just said, you missed the date. That's why he got, the $3 million, but they got more than $3 million worth of it. Here's another one I was going to just summarize real quick. What is sovereign immunity? The government can get away with murder from lawsuits. If they go out of control, accidentally squeeze the trigger and say, oops, I'm sorry, it was too much stress that day, you can't sue them. They work for their God, the government. Rex non potest precari, meaning the king can do no wrong. And it's carried on to the musketeers that work for the king. They have no king but the Caesar. Who's your Caesar? Trump or the government that props him up? The Christian patriot movement. This goes back a long time. Originally referred to posse comitatus. They say this had like 100 people. They're talking about the people that Christian Liberty and some people in Michigan and stuff like that. And we were sending out the Tea Party movement. It was the Z-Rock Docutech at Christian Liberty Academy that reprinted the second, or when was it, in the 90s, early 90s, the poor man's James Bond. They could trace those docutexts. That's why they bought it at Christian Liberty. Excuse me. I was thinking it was cool. I thought we were right. I didn't realize. I thought I could kind of just tone down some of the racist stuff, but I was doing it because it was like I never thought I'd make that much money. I never thought I'd, walk around with always just money in my pocket. I thought I was being blessed by God. See, we did it. The Rosicrucians, the John Birch, they set us up to make us think we were working for John Calvin and the good guys fighting Rome. We were being suckered in, man. Those days are over now. I'm not even going to plan to fight them anymore. I still didn't want to read it. Let's go to 23. What were the Black Hebrews doing there? Ben Israel persuaded a group of African Americans to accompany him to Israel in 1967, teaching that African Americans descended from biblical tribe of Judah, and therefore that Israel is the land of their birthright. That's how you sell out and admit that that's even Israel. This was the time that they brought in the Ethiopian Bible because they said, what do you mean that there's, oh yeah, they went to Africa and said, look, here's a group of Christians that still have an Ethiopic Old Testament Bible, and we think they have the Ark of the Covenant, and it had in their apocrypha and stuff Enoch. It was all a part of the same thing. That's my remembrance of it. Project Megiddo. Oh, they named it after the battle, associated with perceived violence of the year 2000 if we couldn't get it fixed. I know I was working on that Y2K problem. I was buying into it. And Janet Reno, we were stuck as much as the 8 years of Obama looking at this thing. Under Bill Clinton, she had been arrested with a 13-year-old girl. She's a big time lesbian, hardcore militant feminist. Yeah. And we did these. I want to show the new things here. So here's where I got that picture in the thumbnail. What is it anyway? It's the third key from Basil Valentine's 12 Keys. People were into some weird stuff back then. What is it? Oh, earwax, and it's antimicrobial effects. I've been studying it. They keep changing what it does and talking about it. I've never seen anything like that. So I'm closing tabs. We're going to be looking up some of these words. I said I'd look up earlier. Commensalism is a long-term biological interaction, a symbiosis, in which members of one species gain benefit while those of the other species neither benefit nor are harmed. This is in contrast to mutualism, in which both organisms benefit from each other, amensalism, where one is harmed while the other is unaffected, and parasitism, where one is harmed and the other benefits. I think that Rome is a parasite. They just caught on and live off, be good, do what the church says, but don't believe the rest of the Bible. We'll tell you what to believe about the Bible. Dogs, the first domesticated human animal for a reason. If you ever have an opportunity where you're in a position where you can really take care of a dog, that's good. Now, throwing one in the car and hitting the road and saying, I'm gonna experience homelessness on purpose, and so I got a dog. Come on. Symbiosis is any type of a close and long-term biological interaction that goes through the mutualistic, the living together of unlike organisms. I really hope that I have a donkey someday, that a mule, that we got a thing, it's like, we got a long ride today, and my donkey, I could just see it in my donkey's eyes going like, let's do it. Let's go. If you say so, donkey. If it was my donkey, probably will not talk. Want to see some of the commensals? Something about those black walnuts everybody likes. What? Look at that thing flying there. Is that it? A mite. They're just using it as a cab, it sounds like. How about a ride? Where are you going? We don't care. We just want to get out of here. Wow, that looks like an old drawing. Leaf hoppers, hummingbirds. Mutualism, two or more species, where each species has a net benefit. There are ways that, I think you have to separate from the people that have not been born again, because their eyes aren't going to see what makes it worth. What is a synanthrope? It's a belief that man is an organism that evolved to live near humans and benefit from human settlements. Whether animals, plants, they're thinking like seagulls, sparrows, mice, certain monkeys. These things all evolved to live near humans. All right. They got something for everything, don't they?
Let's learn. And some bacteria are beneficial to people, but others cause serious diseases, such as the bacteria chlamydia and Escherichia coli. Living things are incredible creatures that can grow, reproduce, and respond to their environment. Whether big or small, they all share some surprising characteristics that make them unique. And remember, the 5 kingdoms that make up the incredible world of living things are the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the fungi kingdom, Protista kingdom, and the Monera kingdom. And so each living thing has its special place.
There, I feel like my job is done, but we go on. The Los Angeles fetal disposal scandal. 1982. I was deep into my military training of being a surveyor, jumping out of the airplanes whenever I had to. Not something they made fun. It's not like the training. When you get to Fort Bragg, they tell you, oh no, we only jump at night. That'd be more realistic. It's like, what? Yeah. So national tragedy, Reagan called it. Nothing really happened. Guy didn't go to jail, got off on a technicality. 17,000 babies. Abortion had, barely been legal. It was only in the first trimester. Over 16,000 aborted fetus improperly stored in an unrefrigerated. I thought it would say it was one of those metal containers that you put on the back of a train or a truck. And they were shocked that it were over the 20-week gestation limit, because that's all you could get in California at the time in the 80s was an abortion up to, 20 weeks, nothing over that. We told them, look, if you make it legal, they're gonna keep making it more and more legal. They said, why do you have to hate us and think we're lying? Well, because you're proven liars. You're liars. Legally, it was, I think, 23 weeks, 20 weeks to be safe. Yeah. He didn't have to go to jail. Oh, looks like I am going to get gold. No, these prices seem fair. It's the shipping, that hazardous shipping.
Protactinium is a chemical element with the symbol Pa and atomic number 91. It is a highly radioactive metal that belongs to the actinide series of elements. Protactinium was first discovered in 1913 by Casimir Fajans and Oswald Helmuth Göring, who isolated it from uranium ore. The name protactinium is derived from the Greek word protos, meaning first, as it was one of the first elements discovered that followed uranium in the periodic table. Before starting the video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more.
How about no? Oh, shoot. Well, anyway, here's the Dodge Brothers. I had that so I could show you some of the images. Again, the cars were new. The Ford was new. It doesn't matter if everybody's millstone into believing something about the Bible that's not true. That's what our society was. Seeped in racism. They had fraternities, sororities, Freemasons, you name the whole lot. The Odd Fellows, you got it. Rebecca's, they were in on it too. And they paid $5 million back then. And hey, you got to fight the Ford. He's talking bad. He's talking smack about Semites. Look at they died early. After they did their job, they got done away with early and were buried in the family vault. So there's one of their logos. This was the original Dodge logo. They didn't show that on their sign, did they? That's quite the difference right there. They weren't Jewish, but they got paid to put it on there, and it lasted until the late 1930s when people from other nations wouldn't buy their cars with a Star of David on it. So they said, yeah, Henry Ford. Ford launched Mercury in 1939, not the Mercury dime. Mid-range challenge to the Dodge and Buick. It's always been about making money. And you need to pay your people. You need to pay your people. They had to go on strike to fight for their rights. And well, they've set up everybody to think of fighting. Fordism, mass production, mass consumption, improved working conditions to where you can feel happy about being a work slave. Well, those days are over. We look back at the work slave of those days and think, I wish I could be a work slave like those guys. Make America great again. The year of our Ford. That's what they called. That's how it was. It Brave New World where they dated everything as the year of our Ford.
Catholics started fighting each other on theology. And the thing to keep in mind with medieval Europe is that it was Christian, but not in the way that we think, where there were lots of people who were Christian, but they were only culturally Christian, and they weren't that serious about religion. They were kind of doubting of God. They were kind of degenerate. Where in medieval Europe, the social organizing principle was Christianity, but that didn't mean everyone was a devout Christian or really cared or wasn't cynical. So you had this huge population, even when Christianity was the dominant state-sanctioned culture, who were not fully Christian culture or any of those things. And so once you try to dig through it, you find there's lots of different unspoken assumptions that have been papered over in our society.
How does that relate to, because I understand what you're saying with animals, but then there's also a leftist trope where they also try to overly compare humans to animals in a way that relates to the state of nature or communism.
Thank you for that transition. You have saved me lots of effort with that transition. So this is one of the things Carl Jung and Charles Taylor talk about, and this is the best way to introduce the main intellectual and worldview difference between how pre-industrial people processed the world and people today do, where it's not a...
This is what, if there's going to be a part of takeaway, this is a pretty good explanation of what happened and of what the world today, you know. They don't believe in fairy tales, fairies, flat earth, and everything because, well, God is dead. They know there is no God, that everything evolved now. So this is how he's explaining, this is how we get along today, looking back at the past.
A shift in pure worldview. It's that we categorically assess the world differently, where pre-industrial societies were largely idealist philosophically and were materialist philosophically. And so as an example of this, Charles Taylor talks about the buffered personality. And the buffered personality is a concept modernity has, that there is independent critical thought which exists distinctly from the context the person is thinking in. So if a person in China makes a rationally correct decision, they're operating on an independent, rational plane of existence, which exists apart from their culture, apart from their sex, their class. The left also trips themselves back up, and they say the opposite too. The left has no logical consistency, but I've said that 100 times. And so the buffered personality is that the human mind exists different from its environment. And that's part of the incredibly historically important Spinoza, Descartes, and Galileo axis, which split the medieval world from the modern world. And when you look at trans is the ultimate culmination, that you can have the soul of...
Look how naturally he's going to say, because they believe you can have the soul of a girl in a boy, and they know this now.
Soul of a boy in a woman's body, and this is a Gnostic concept. It only makes sense through the Gnostic paradigm the left is descended from. And then in the medieval world, in the pre-industrial world, their idea is that consciousness exists independently from materia, which we do have a significant amount of evidence for now. And so there's different types of consciousness. And the pre-industrial world perceived consciousness as their ultimate mental starting point. So when they're talking about God and the devil, they're talking about how we humans perceive our environment. So if you were on drugs and went to hell, in their worldview, you literally went to hell because it's your conscious experience. So they saw dreams and these things as parts of your living experience in ways that we don't, where we would see your material body and we would see that you materially did not go to hell. Thus, we would discount the things you saw on that spiritual trip. This one difference substantiates how religious and how scientific people perceive the world. And they originally were not seen as contradiction, which was a later thing added to it. But in the medieval world, they saw the collective psychology of a society as something to be defended, where they saw knights as defenders of the spirit, in that. they saw the church as defenders of the spirit of a society, where they were like warriors who fought off the Vikings or the Hungarians, or invaders fought off demonic possession. So the Catholic Church saw themselves as warriors against forces of demonic possession, and they saw mental illness. In their book, mental illness was demonic possession, where this
This is the guy regurgitating their history. It's what they need to believe.
Right. Well, because they work you back and forth until they get you where
Yes.
they want you. Because they're both like hyper universalist and hyper anti-universalist.
Yeah.
And then the right gets caught kind of reacting to one side of that or another instead of finding a synthesis.
Yes.
That's more consistent with how we view things in the past.
Yes. And I mean, the issue the left runs into, which they get descended from Gnosticism, is that if the world is bad, then destroying the world is good. And you can't just take things you can't just shrug your shoulders and say that the world's going to follow its own direction, because the left fundamentally does think life is bad. They think that the Darwinistic process between men and women, between the stronger conquering the weak, between the constant struggle of life, they think the active life force is bad, and they've effectively used the bureaucracy to declare war on life and say that everything needs to be its opposite, because the purpose of the left is have normal structures, flip them on their opposite, but what you've done is you've forced every living creature to basically declare war on itself.
So again, fake math, fake atomic, nuclear weapons, the rest of the world that's not into the Bible, they're divided as Trinitarians and non-Trinitarians. This is where I quit listening. I think it was about where Paul writes good scripture.
As he does in all his letters when he speaks in them of these matters. There are some things in them that are hard to understand, which the ignorant and unstable twist to their own destruction, as they do the other scriptures.
Thought I had something here. False flag America into a war? You think? Yeah. Looks like you're going to war. Tel Aviv got a direct hit. A couple of them, I guess. Oh, well. There's some people that cannot wait. Now, the reason the attack was launched was preventative self-defense. So if you type in, like I did, reason of preventative self-defense, defend against or prevent possible future attacks. That's what it's described. It's always been a controversial concept in international politics, but United States is well into it since, forever. It was only quantified after 2001 and the Iraq war. Look, we know they got the weapons of the mass destruction and we're going to go take them out. Take them down. Down, doobie-doo, down. So I read this. It's, India and all of the other nations. I know you think, well, if it's not America, who cares? Well, right now, America is not the power it used to be. And India and the other countries are thinking, you know what, just attacking somebody because you think of what they might do is not the way to do it. It shouldn't have to be explained. Closing things out now. All these people got killed, man, but something happened here. And I'm thinking the mafias, there's always the largest robbery in England, the largest robbery in Russia, the largest robbery in Japan, the largest robbery in the United States, where all of a sudden the mafias get influxed with what at the time is just a tremendous amount of money. And what can they do except bribe cops, bribe lawyers, bribe judges, bribe senators, kill presidents.
Estranged wife, and a
Nothing they
$300 a
couldn't
day
do.
gambling habit on a $15,000 a year salary. Needless to say, Werner
So
had
they
a lot
they got this guy hooked on the gambling.
of debt, and it wasn't the kind where you could file Chapter 11 bankruptcy and walk away from it. By 1978, it was estimated that he owed $18,000 to various bookies across New York City. His life was in danger thanks to his poor choices. He needed to get rich quick if he was going to survive. But the actual genesis for the famous 1978 heist began 2 years earlier on October 8th, 1970, for products across the tri-state area, while also operating behind the scenes as a bookmaker of the
These
Lucchese crime
Probably
family.
really
He was
happened.
overweight.
Type
With
of
a
hit-
huge beard arrived, his life changed in ways that he could not imagine before. That day, at about 3 a.m.,
And there are
were
people
completely
out there
random,
who will
making the
kill
cash that
you.
was stolen in the Lufthansa heist practically
And this
untraceable.
is
did not
the
sit right with
famous,
Jimmy the
was this
Gent.
Donnie Brasco?
It made him sick to even consider giving that much
No.
cash to a person who just passed contact information along without taking.
That was the banana.
This caused investigators to zero in on 4 suspects: Tommy DeSimone, Angelo Sepe, Frank Burke, and a man named Anthony Rodriguez. Rodriguez was a known criminal whose name in this story only comes up in the FBI's possible suspects list. There isn't any evidence or stories that place him as part of Burke's crew for the Lufthansa heist, so it looks like they got this one wrong. But DeSimone and Sepe were very strong leads. It is believed that they
They
are the
all
2
end
gunmen
up
who stayed
dead.
behind with
I just want you to
the
think,
robbery as
you
the
know,
inside man.
late 70s, The Godfather was the early 70s. J. Edgar Hoover didn't die until the 70s, and then finally they could say, well, I guess there is a mafia in the United States, because the head of the FBI for 40 years didn't want to believe it.
And bail was set at $1 million, of which half needed to be cash. He didn't have that much money, and even if he did receive his 10% cut and use it here, he would need to explain where it all came from. So he was forced to languish in jail and wait for the wheels of justice to turn. A few days later, a grand jury formally indicted him based on the available evidence.
Or ridiculousness. I was just, after I was going to show you that stuff, I kept looking. And I run into some weird stuff in books all the time. This is a pretty weird picture. They have it divided into different panels, but not really divided the best, I don't think. The emerald tablet thing. These are leftovers. But it's alchemy, they want to, and it turns out that the Philosopher's Stone is not really it's wisdom. It's their form of alchemy, isn't turning lead into gold. It's what is it? Cryptic text attributed to Greek figure Hermes Trismegistus. Earliest versions are for Arabic recensions, preserved in mystical and alchemical treatises. And what, you can do whatever you want with that extra 1,000 years. Producing the Philosopher's Stone and making gold. So the Philosopher's Stone isn't, the substance. It was also known as a tincture, and the powder, the elixir of life. Can you believe it? I mean, and they shoved this down our throat with Harry Potter. And the ability to heal all forms of illness. Was a lot more than making gold. Emerald tablets, emerald schnablets. But they were into it, or you don't produce and still have people talking about the beautiful work, shows dramatic detail of the Philosopher's Stone as it leaves heaven and enters earth. The picture immediately becomes one of dozens in the emerald tablets, symbolic mandalas, which alchemists used for meditation. And many medieval alchemists sat staring at these drawings for hours at the end of the Golden Age and writing a book for the people that would come after them. Did you, the first thing that struck you from the picture, the obvious division into the above and the below, and the sharp line between the two indicates that these are very different realms. Above, the larger sun of the one mind, whose rays encompass the whole what rises behind the Son of Heaven, or what Hermes calls mind of the maker. Okay. Wrapping things up. So I was looking like, what? That's a funny word, OOIDS, oits, from a beach. Kind of looks more like a better pearl than a pearl. But there's different kinds of them in soft stones, hard stones, limestones, ammonites, agates, I mean. Crazy, huh? And didn't want you to forget about the Fabian Society back at the same time. British socialist white people who were going to basically become wolves in sheep's clothing. Even put it on their logo, wolf in sheep's clothing. The people that they shoved down our throat, especially the writers, they're the ones that were into it. They're the ones they made sure you heard about and were considered how smart they are and who we should study if you want to get a college degree. And of course, they all, wanted women to vote and do this and that and blame the men because a lot of them swung both ways. If you know what I mean, they were gay. This is a flat earth nation. The golden age is past because the mud flood was Armageddon. Me and my friends will never tell you anything else because we're dedicated to having your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakaman. Adios.